name, to honor Him today, our worship, and we appreciate the privilege. We haven't got to attend the meeting a great deal, but the theme of the meeting is excellent. The direction that Brother Mackey had called Friday, asking about talk, wasn't applied to that, very general. He just said, preach what's on your heart. And I appreciate that latitude. But about anything that we preach would affect the family. We could have a good brother stand up here and talk about the communion. Spend some time on the communion, instrumental music, or whatever. And that can be traced, that can be applied to, and in the application of obedience and doing Bible things in Bible ways and teaching our family all about that. And so we can apply that even in the direction of the family. And we hope tonight to share some things that may not be directly related to the family itself, but will help us have better families and stronger families. And I think that's what we want. Those of us who are older have lived long enough to see the strength and the purity of the church wax and wane. There have been some wonderful, outstanding times in my life, and I know in yours also, times that are memorable that I doubt I will ever forget. There have been some bad times, some difficult times, and we've all, I suppose, about all of us who've lived in a number of years in the church have faced that, and they have not been pleasant. Sometimes the devil is routed by our people, and sometimes he's coddled, it seems, and so we face it all, about the whole spectrum. Older people in the church, certainly they, and I think some of our young people who show a measure of wisdom even in their younger years, we should have, at least in our older years, accumulated a little insight into the church, into what is best for her immediately, and of course her direction. And the Bible gives a clear insight into what is lacking in the heart of people, or for instance, that don't obey the gospel. Why is that the case? And doesn't it also give an insight into the heart of people who show very little interest in the church? We have only a casual, almost a nodding acquaintance with righteousness and godly living and all of that, but really have little interest in the church. And I think we can know a cure for our own failures, and we all have them. Some of us have more than others, but we all have them. The cure for our failures and the failures of our people, maybe the average, if that's a fit term, the average careless church member. But I think we can know how the world can change if they would. Certainly the direction of the church is emphasized. And we use a little passage from Matthew chapter 22, where beginning with verse 36, the Bible tells us about a certain lawyer of the Pharisees who came before Jesus. And the Bible says he was there tempting him, or he was trying or testing Jesus' knowledge of the law. And so he asked him, Master, which is the great commandment in the law? And Jesus said unto him, Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. And Mark and Luke add, with all thy strength. And Jesus said, This is the first and great commandment, and the second is like unto it, Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. And so he said, and these two commandments hang on the law and the prophets. What Jesus said, they're applied to the law of Moses, of course. When he talked about, these two commandments hang on the law and the prophets. But I fail to see that doesn't also fit, in principle, our covenant age today. Could you name a commandment? Could you name an order of God that does not fall under that category of that God is supreme, and we are to love God with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength? And see, when we do that, all else falls in place. And there's a close correlation between law and love that he's talking about here in Matthew chapter 22. In fact, Jesus said, even though he applied here the law of Moses, and I have tried to redirect it and show you, and you believe it, I'm sure, that under that umbrella, that great eternal precept there, that or truism, and that precept, yes, that we should love the Lord our God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength. Under that umbrella we find, as I suggested, just alluded to, law. Law. The other night at home, David Scott made an observation that I thought was worthy when he said, time is our friend. Time is our friend. And you can think of the many ways that that is so, and how that we enjoy time. It's a time to grow, and a time to serve, and a time to correct our wrongs and faults and failings, and to redirect our lives and such. And certainly a time to prepare for judgment. We're using time tonight. And so time is our friend. But law is our friend. Law is our friend. In fact, even civil law is our friend. It is restrictive, but it exists. It exists for order and for peace and tranquility and for our safety. Civil law. Well, the law of God is also our friend. The law of God. And sometimes the term law, at least this is so in the world and in the secular element of humanity, but shouldn't be so in the church. Law is a bit abrasive. Law means I'm regulated, and I can't do my own thing. I can't live as I want to live and engage in all the things that my flesh may want to engage in. I'm restricted by law, and that's the way it ought to be. It is for our benefit. It is for our good. It also here, as I said, in civil law, the law of God also exists for order and for peace and for tranquility. As far as the safety factor there, God's law exists for our safety, factoring this in here, the eternal security that we desire. I'm not talking about the denominational doctrine of you can't fall from grace or eternal security here, but the eternal security that we anticipate when we're on, when we are redeemed and set at Jesus' own right hand. Under Moses, they claimed, those who had studied this and spent some time with it, they claimed that the first 5 books of Moses, called the Torah, contained 613 laws. And whether that's right or not, I don't know, but they are many. And there are 248 of them are positive, and 365 of them are negative. You know, some people don't like negative preaching. They need to take notice of that. Here is 40% of these laws, if the 613 is accurate, and those who are scholarly in Jewish things and study the Torah, they say that is right. 40% of the laws are positive, and 60% of the laws are negative. And if you don't like negative teaching, maybe you're just that much unlike God. See, when you consider, when you analyze this point just here, we're looking at what God saw man needed in life. We need to be restricted. We need to be told what to do and how to live. We also need restrictions in our life. And we all recognize that. And we know that's the way we raise our kids. Isn't that so? That's the way we raise our children. That we gave them things to do. And we regulated their activities and all of that. And certainly in the regulation there was in fact the negative. But of these 613, or however many they were all subservient to the great overruling precept that thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, soul, mind, and strength. It seems to me, Matthew 22, just here, 36 beginning as I just read, introduces the foundation or the root of our ills and our failures. And how makes it even come in society and certainly in the church? Something that is not done. That is not done. That is loving God with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength. Something that is not done. And don't you think that would fit even society, even this mass of people out here that many of them we are acquainted with well, and we love and we appreciate, but they have no real recognition for God's law, no appreciation for the law of God. They certainly don't love God with all of their being. They don't do that. And because they don't, because of that, then we have what we see in society. I don't know if they've concluded the young man in Newtown, Connecticut was deranged or not, but certainly just looking at the picture of that awful tragedy there, he certainly didn't epitomize loving God with all his being. Certainly not that. In fact, the very opposite of that. Now, we hear a lot preached in the church, and it needs to be preached. Love for our fellows, love each other. And those are worthy sermons. But we must not forget the supreme here that Jesus named. He said, above this, even, he said, he isolated loving our neighbor. It was second there to loving God. See, that's the first thing. And it's not enough for us to just get along in our congregations and love each other in our congregation. But we first have to base this worship service, these elements of fellowship that we all enjoy, it must first have its root in our love for God. The fact that He is above all, supreme, and we love Him as described there in Matthew chapter 22. First, love God. If we don't do that, no matter how intense, no matter how settled our love is for our brethren, no matter how fixed it is for our brethren, if we don't love God first, it is for naught. It is for naught. We love God above all else, and that must be the direction of our life. In fact, here in the little line, as we read a while ago, love God with all of our heart, our feelings, our deepest and sincerest emotions there. Love Him with all of our soul, the essence, the fullness of our spiritual self there. Love Him, he said, with all of our mind, our intellect, our understanding, our intelligence. Love Him with all of our mind. And then Luke and Mark, when they add strength, possibly make us a reference to our body, where all of this is acted out. All of this takes place. Vine says in his expository dictionary of Greek words, he said the body is the instrument of life. And with that, he's simply saying that the body is the medium through which we get anything done. See, it is the instrument of life, and it's certainly where our strength lies. And here, if we translate strength in the idea of activity, then this would fit in this just in the fullness of our strong response to what love demands, obedience and faithfulness and holiness. All of that has to do with giving our heart to God. Now I want to talk to you about sin. And it's an ugly thing. We don't like it. And it's really the most horrible thing in all the land. The most horrible thing. It's the only thing that will keep us out of heaven. The only. It stands, if anything stands between us and God, it has to be identified as sin. And there are a lot of consequences for sin. A lot of evils that are wrought because of sin. Some of them we suffer in this life. The alcoholic, the cirrhosis of the liver, the drug addict, maybe die with the OD or whatever. There are some ways, and certainly the pains of conscience, that is always there. The consequence in that area. Of all the many consequences that we may associate with sin, I just want to isolate one. And throughout the rest of the few things we have to say, I want to talk about that. And in this, we're reviewing the divisions in the church, the innovations of the church, the worldliness that is in the church. One of the consequences of all of that, and anything else that you could name that is sinful and wrong and keep us out of heaven, anything you could name. The one thing I want us to focus on just is God. I want to talk to you about this tragedy in our life, in our relationship with God. That the sin, the evil, the weaknesses, the whatever, neglects in our life that are there. By this, we offend God. We offend God. I think of some of the things that have happened that we're all acquainted with. We've seen it in the world. Maybe we've seen it in our families. Where people don't obey the gospel. You're familiar with Acts 2:38, baptism for the remission of sins, and Acts 22:16, baptism washes our sins away with the blood of Christ. We know all of that. I'm telling you that God is offended when people deny this truth, and it's rampant in our land. When that truth is denied, when the Bible so clearly gives us a medium by which we can have our sins washed away, and people say, not so, all you have to do is believe. And God is offended at that. and they do not love God. Those who promote the doctrine do not love God as they ought. You're familiar with the little line there in 1 Corinthians chapter 14 about the preacher, the woman preacher, and we say, well, we have no problem with that. Well, that doesn't really matter. We preach often of things we have no problem with, to keep from having a problem with. We do that very often, but this is rampant in the digressive church. All over the United States now, women are filling the pulpit. But you know the passage, that your women keep silent in the churches and so forth. And the little line, verse 35, which is shame for women to speak in the church. And every time a woman stands in the pulpit, she walks here and ascends to even share the truth, even share good things, God is offended because He has told us what to do and what not to do, and we cannot, according to what Jesus said. I'm applying here what He said there of Himself. God, He said in John chapter 14, verse 21, in the area of love, if you love me, keep my commandments. In verse 15, verse 21, he that hath my commandments and keepeth them, he it is that loveth me. And then verse 23, if a man love me, he will keep my words. And so when we violate God, we offend Him. We offend Him. And I don't know if that strikes your heart like it does mine or not. I think likely so. What an awful thing to think that we would offend the great God of heaven. You know who God is. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. That's the God we're talking about. A God whom we offend when we sin, when we err, when we violate His holiness. You remember the little passage that Jesus spoke in Matthew chapter 16 when He said, upon this rock, the fact that I'm the Son of God, I will build my church. Do you remember that? Sure you do. Sure you do. And then folks come along and tell us that the church is not essential. Or to join a man-made denomination and reject the church of His Son. God is offended at that. God is offended. I'm saying here that we need to, in our knowledge of the truth, that we have opportunity, share it as best we can, and with the clarity that we can, so that others may not taste of His wrath because of this offense. God told us to sing. He tells us, Ephesians 5:19, Colossians 3:16, Hebrews 2:12, other passage, 1 Corinthians 14. He tells us to sing, and no hint at all of instrumental music, no hint at all of that. And yet the instrument is brought in. And so when Brother Lewis Pinkerton, back in 1860, brought that small melodeon into the church service there at Midway, Kentucky, God was offended at that. He was offended. And so He is even in our today. It's growing. I mean, it's our digressive brethren. I realize people reap what they sow, but I still have a measure of sympathy for them. What they're going through. There's some who still try to, even though they violate the communion and God's method of assembly and all of that, and yet they refuse the instrument, and yet they're fighting this on all hands. Where the instrument is brought into the service. The church over here at Richland Hills in Fort Worth, they have now a Saturday night communion service. The Church of Christ, they retain the name. Unlike Max Mercado and Oak Hills in San Antonio, they retain the name. And they have brought in the Saturday night communion, and they brought in the instrumental music in the service, and such as that. And God is offended by that. God is offended by that. I think God was offended with G.C. Brewer in, what was it, 1912 or somewhere in there. Brother Brewer corrupted the church, the worship of the church in Chattanooga, Tennessee, when he brought in individual cups. Not easily. He, if I can use this term, he fought his brethren over that. He fought his brethren. And don't you know, some of the liberal brethren, they got tired of hearing the brethren say, we can't make the change here, we can't do this. We have the Bible pattern. You know what it says in Matthew 26 and Mark 14 and Luke 22 and 1 Corinthians 11. We know what that said. We cannot change, Brother Brewer. Don't you know the liberal people got tired of hearing that? And finally, the liberal brethren run out. And after much trouble and unrest, that the service was corrupted there, the communion service was corrupted in Chattanooga. We live to glorify God. And we ought to be not only terrified at the idea, but we ought to be ashamed that we would push him aside as some insistent, bothersome lawmaker. We have to respect him for who he is. Don't you appreciate somebody, maybe on the job, that knows what they're doing? And they can come along and they can say, this is how you do it, and this is how it must be done. And you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to worry about it. It's all figured out. You're told what to do. And so that's the blessing in the New Testament. We're told how to worship. We're told how to set the table and all of that. We glorify God. I read a little line the other day that touched my heart, affected me. It said, the most noble thing that a man can do is to defend the truth. And I thought, that's great. But you know, the more I looked at that, it's not true. It's not true. The most noble thing is found there in Matthew chapter 22. Jesus said that. The most noble thing a man can do is to love God with all of his heart, all of his soul, all of his mind, and all of his strength. That's the most noble thing. Now, couched in that is this idea of defending the truth, certainly that. But what I'm talking to you about is loving God in this sense here of our whole heart, our whole person, our whole being. You remember in Leviticus chapter 10, when Nadab and Abihu offered that strange fire unto the Lord, the Bible said he commanded them not. He didn't tell them they couldn't. He just said, this is what you do. And so they did something wrong. They got fire from another place other than apparently the altar. And they offered strange fire. And God sent out fire and smote these boys. And there with the odor of the charred flesh and all the experience, there was their daddy. There was Aaron, who saw all of this and was about to express, it seems, a measure of regret and grief and whatever. And Moses chided him for that. And he said, this is that the Lord spake, saying, I will be sanctified in them that come nigh me, and before all the people I will be glorified. See, God couldn't let that pass. If God had let that infraction pass, fire is fire. Does it matter? Yes, it mattered, because God said it mattered. But God could not let this infraction pass. He had lost his image, his sanctification, setting him apart in the minds of the people, because the subject of the law became in one sense, the lawmaker. At least they established a new law if they could get by with it. And so he said, that's not the case. That's not the way it will be. I will be sanctified. I will be set apart, and then that come nigh to me. You know, sometimes we pray. We hear it often in our prayers, and found Matthew chapter 6. Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Wonderful expression. But that's not something God is. That's not a manifestation of God's character. That's something we do. Hallow God's name. We set his name apart. And we say that in prayer or in worship. We ought to mean that. We're glorifying God. Hallowed be thy name. May your character, the essence of you, Holy Father, may it be magnified, set apart in our actions and in our hearts as we worship you. May it be hallowed. As he says here in Leviticus chapter 10, may the people that come before me, he said, I will be sanctified by them. Those that come nigh me and before all the people, he said, I will be glorified. Now, of this magnifying God, we cannot innovate and we cannot divide our people with careless advice and doctrine. We cannot compromise truth and think that God will not be offended. God has given us laws to live by. He's given us direction. We cannot expect to violate all of any of that and God not be offended. And I want you to keep this in your heart, folks. What an awful thing it is to offend God. What an awful thing, a tragic thing, a fearful thing. Oh, wasn't it a truth? He spoke and he said, it is a fearful thing to fall into the hands of the living God. I think God was offended back some years ago when our brothers divided us with sermons and published material insisting that the Lord's Supper could be engaged in anywhere, at home, in a motel room, the deer camp, or anywhere we might find ourselves on vacation, take Sunday employment, visit kinfolks, or whatever. I think God was offended when that was brought in. We all basically were, so to speak, that we use the expression, on the same page. We had a few brethren who practiced that. We did. But in the main, we had no problem with it. That's the reason why Brother Larry suggested we study this thing. That's what it was. It was a study, but then it had to be prolonged because sermons were preached and advocating and booklets were published and circulated to advocate and to promote this. God was offended at that. He told us to not forsake the assembling of ourselves together, and that assembling together is necessary for our good and for the welfare of the church. 1 Corinthians 14:26, he said, let all things be done unto edify. That term edify means to build up. To build up. In fact, one translation says, let all things be done for the betterment of the church, the welfare of the church. And how is it possible that divisive doctrine that came in there promoted, how could that possibly be for the building of the church? It has done nothing but harm us and divide us and cause ill will. Yeah? God was offended. God was offended. Is offended. God was offended when our people are counseled to worship with those who preach, practice, and promote the ministry. God is offended. I mean, he plainly says in Ephesians chapter 5, he said that he might present to himself a glorious church, not having spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that it should be holy and without blemish. It's offensive to God that a congregation who teaches a doctrine that heads the works of the flesh, the very least, that we can worship there and we can fellowship that. I appreciated, was it last year that David dealt with that somewhat here? I appreciated what he had to say so very much. You know, our brother David has some experience. It's not just a matter of study. It's just not that. But it's a matter of having observed, what has happened in the church through the last many years. Observation sometimes is one of our very best teachers. It's alarming to me that brethren are not afraid to offend God, taking chances on things, even if they're not settled in their own mind. One brother told me not long ago after the Burleson meeting, he said it was his decision, it was his view here, that everybody should just be allowed to make their own choice, at least whether they decide for themselves whether or not they could worship with a divorce and remarriage congregation. Oh, my brothers. That includes our children. Bring up a child in the way he should go. And so, do we do that with our children? Is that what we teach our weak members? You just make up your own mind? That implies there's an inference in that we should not try to change the thinking. If everybody's allowed to make their own decisions, isn't that suggesting that we should not interfere with their decision making? It seems to me that would be the case. But even beyond this, our children are not always right here. Our children grow up, they get 18 or 19 or 20, and they marry and they establish a home. And so with that idea, if it's a good solid premise here that everybody should be allowed to make up their own mind about things that the Bible is very clear on, it seems to me then that when Johnny comes to the family and says, Dad, I think Mary and I will start worshiping down the road over here, about 16 or 18 miles down Highway 84 west, and I think we'll start over there. There's some good people over there, and they have a powerful preacher, and he does preach in favor of divorce and marriage, but we're going to bring our family up over there. We're going to raise our family there. And what would we say to that? We've established this premise that people ought to be able to make up their own mind and decide for themselves, apparently without any interference. I'm saying we all are autonomous in that sense, and we ought to make up our own mind. But I'm just saying here that we ought to be allowed to preach the truth on the matter. And when somebody's going astray, when the thinking is askew on matters that is detrimental to the church, that is not building up the church, I think they ought to be encouraged to study the matter. And maybe you study with them or whatever, and broaden this approach just here beyond this idea of letting somebody decide for themselves. I feel like God is offended at the congregational autonomy arguments that sometimes advance in our day. Where it seems to me that in some cases common sense is even left out, even common sense. You know, I don't know of anybody that doesn't believe in congregational autonomy. I've been a member of the church almost 60 years, and so far as I recall, if my mind doesn't fail me here, I don't know of anybody I've ever met in the church that did not recognize congregational autonomy. But folks, congregational autonomy means we are self-governed. And we will not, we cannot, we must not allow external pressures to force us into a certain mold or whatever. We make our own decision. Everybody believes that. But that does not mean, congregational autonomy does not mean that we have no obligations to the brotherhood. Congregational autonomy does not mean that we are not accountable to anyone else. If Mullin decides to have the Baptist preacher next door preach for us every first and third Sunday, that's not your fault. You're not accountable for that. You're not. You won't be held responsible for that. We will be. But does that mean we're not accountable to you as a sister congregation? Have we forgotten that we're a brotherhood? We're responsible to you. We're accountable to you. And so when you look at our lives, you will say, I look at our service there and what we're doing, then though you're not guilty in our decision, you become guilty when you endorse us in that. He that biddeth God's speed is partaker of his evil deeds, the Bible said. And to bid God's speed is to wish encouragement. And so when you say, I'm visiting Lorena, you will say. And you say, Brother Jerry, I understand that you have Reverend so-and-so of the Baptist Church preaching you the first and third Sunday. I said, well, yes, we decided that's the thing to do in our congregation, which we haven't. But I would say you that, you'd say, well, I don't know if that's wise or not, but would you lead our first song here? Or would you take the sermon today? I mean, you're giving me encouragement that you really may not disagree with me. You really may not. Congregational autonomy must be emphasized that, you know, we, as individuals, we are autonomous. Here's Brother Ty. He is autonomous. He makes his own decisions. He orders his own life. That does not mean he's not accountable. Brother Tim Watts has a special appreciation for the local congregation. And he emphasizes that. And one of the blessings that Tim, he talked to him very long, one of the blessings that Tim will suggest that comes to him as a member of the local congregation is his accountability. He's not just a free floater, worship wherever you know, and not accountable to anyone. He's responsible to the congregation. And that's the way it ought to be. That's what God intended that it be. Let me suggest this to you. Now, because of what has been seen in social media, I don't know if this fits anybody here or not. I really don't. But I would suggest to you that you offended God. I'm going to say when instead of if. In view of what was posted on social media. You offended God when you went to the polls last November and did all within your power to thwart His purpose.
Amen.
You did everything you could. When you stood there and you, however it's done, I don't even know, when you marked to vote against our incumbent president, which if I had been voting, I would have also. But I've stayed out of that because of what God has told me about Him ruling in the kingdoms of men. But when you did that, you did everything within your power at that time, everything to stop God's will from coming to pass. And He ruled anyway. You fought against God. You need to read Galatians, or rather Acts 5, is it verse 29 or somewhere in there, where Gamaliel said, lest happily we be found to fight even against God. Oh, it's a fearsome thought. When God says, I will do this, like Romans chapter 13, Daniel 2, Daniel 4, he said in Romans chapter 13 of this, there's no power but of God. The powers that be are ordained of God. One brother asked the other day about that. Was that equivalent to God will provide for us? He will give us our food. Matthew 6:33 there. Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things are added to you. But we have a part in that. We have a part in that. In causing God's will to come to pass. And we certainly do. But the difference, folks, is that God told us we had a part, and he told us what that part was. If your hand will not work, neither shall he eat. We have a part of it. But he has never given us a part in setting up governmental rulers in our leadership. He's never given us that. We've never had that privilege. What he has ordained, he has ordained. In the first place, it's impossible for us to coordinate our voting with God's will, God's mind, because we don't know his mind. Do you think he doesn't know Barack Obama? And the evils of the man? The office to be respected? I understand that. Do you think he doesn't know that? And for some reason, you may not understand it, I may not understand it, he said, one more time. God is offended that we're in the church. And in some places it's growing, some places it's not. But some places it's growing, particularly in your metropolitan areas, it's growing. Offended at worldliness in the church. And friend, just look at your own life. If worldliness is in your life, he is offended at you. At you. Sisters, when you know what 1 Corinthians 11 says, you know exactly what it says about the cutting of the hair. If you violate God in that, you offend him. You offend him. You know what it says. You offend him. What about other things? What about immodest dress? Oh, yes. You offend God. It's just a matter of maybe the folks not liking it, or some of the brethren. You offend God when you dress in others. You offend him. And you guys, what about this? Is there anything more obvious in society and sometimes in the church than the insanity over sports? I've never seen anything like it. Our little weekly country newspaper there. You may have 2 or 3 pages of same old, somebody tackling some water. It's amazing. I mean, how can it, is it possible, with your honest Christian heart, can you say, they say like Dallas played Washington yesterday. Sunday even, yeah. Lord, I wonder how many of them went to church. 82,000 attendance there. The record for Darrell K. Royal Memorial Stadium in Austin is the Longhorns is 101,000. Can you imagine being in that environment with thousands of these people drinking, cursing, screaming at the top of their lungs, and that not be revelry, that not be worldly? Can you imagine that? I'm appealing to your honest heart, dear. Can you imagine that? And incidentally, of Mr. Royal, elevated coach, he was the one that said, football doesn't build character, it eliminates the weak ones. He was the one that said, only angry people win football games. He was the one that said, young people go to football games to hoop and holler and raise H-E-double-L. I'm through. But I want you to think about offending God. Do something for the church. Do something for the church. Let's determine in this coming year that we'll live like we know we ought to live. Don't live without purpose. Someday it'll all be over. Some of us not too far out. But we don't know. Someday it'll all be over. Don't so live that your last rational thought would be of your life and your service to the church. Don't let it be, I wasted it. I wasted it. Glorify God in your body and in your spirit, which God bless us.